Most people are not aware of it or haven't thought very carefully about it because it doesn't seem to matter to us. This is getting to be so serious that we are reaching a cathartic moment.
So far, we're on an extremely dangerous path. There's a move, and it may come to a head in a matter of days, not months, but days. So here's what happened. Iran had fired, different estimates, but 200 or more drone missiles, but also cruise missiles and ballistic missiles. These two countries basically hate each other, and that goes back a long way. But they've never actually directly attacked each other. Israel has never fired a missile at Iran. Until Saturday, Iran had never fired any missiles at Israel. They operate through proxies. The proxies could be Hamas, Hezbollah, the Syrians, the Iraqis, Houthis in Yemen. The Israelis have their commander teams. They get basically spies in Iran who tip them off. So a lot of going back and forth, but they had not directly attacked each other until Saturday. So far, we're on an extremely dangerous path. Number one, we're escalating. You kill 3 generals, we're going to just fire 200 missiles at you in your territory. So there is an escalatory dynamic to it. Israel has nuclear reactors and Israel has nuclear weapons. They've never publicly admitted it, but no one doubts that they have a fairly large stockpile of nuclear weapons. Iran has nuclear reactors. They have ballistic missiles. At least so far, they don't have a nuclear weapon, but estimates are there may be only 6 to 12 weeks, maybe a few months at most, to be able to actually test a nuclear device and then over time turn that into a weapon. They definitely have highly enriched uranium. Uranium that kind of comes out of the ground or for a nuclear reactor, but for a weapon, it has to be enriched to 90% plus or 95%. They haven't taken that final step to detonating a nuclear device, but they're not that far away. So one, full-scale nuclear power, another power that's just, as I say, maybe a couple months away from having nuclear weapons if they want them, both with nuclear reactors, which are different than weapons, except if you blow them up, they can melt down. You're back to a Chernobyl-type scenario, so extremely dangerous. We don't do conspiracy theories. We don't guess. We either know exactly what we're talking about or we use reasonable inference. We're always grounded in the facts, even if the facts are pretty startling in and of themselves. But here's what appears to have happened. I have this from several different sources in the Middle East, in Europe, and to some extent the United States. And you got to put everything in the context of the fact that this is an election year in the United States. And I can tell you that the people at the White House care more about the election than they do about war and peace. That's too bad. That's sad. You should always put national policy and the national security of the United States ahead of your election considerations, but that's not what they do. So they're thinking about how's this going to play out in terms of the election. So what the United States did is they basically called up Iran, operating through intermediaries. The information I have is the intermediary was Oman, which is, of course, on the right across the Straits of Hormuz from Iran, physically very close to Iran, but they also have a good dialogue with them, even though they're Arab. The Iranians are Persian, but they talk. So the U.S. operating through Oman said to Iran, hey, we know you're going to strike back. Everybody gets that. We know you probably have to. You can't just let this assassination of these generals go. But why don't you do something that the Israelis can defend against, number one, and give us a heads up, let us know about when and what, and then go ahead and fire your missiles. But if we know what they are and when they're coming, Israel can fend them off and you'll be able to satisfy your own people. Hey, we struck back, but not actually kind of go further down the path towards World War III. And the Iranians agreed to that. Now you say, well, wait a second. Why on earth would the Iranians listen to Joe Biden on a proposal like this? The answer is, don't forget, Biden has given the Iranians tens of billions of dollars. He's released funds that were frozen, and most importantly, he took off the oil sanctions. Iran was subject to very severe sanctions on the export of oil. Biden removed those sanctions, so now Iran is making tens of billions of dollars more by exporting oil without fear of U.S. sanctions. And of course, the price of oil is up to a Brent crude, which is the European Middle East price, is about $92 a barrel. It's not 60 where it was not that long ago. So Iran has probably 20 billion reasons to work with Joe Biden, and that would be $20 billion that he's given them, either in releasing assets or taking away the sanctions. And by the way, this goes all the way back to the Obama administration. Remember Obama landed a plane in Tehran and they dumped off, I think, about $20 billion of cash and gold. They had to call the Netherlands Central Bank to print up a bunch of euros, 500 euro notes at the time, 200 euro notes also, and gold. So we've been doing everything possible to help Iran. So Iran would have listened to that, okay, it's a deal. Then the U.S. calls Israel and says, look, they're attacking you, probably knew when, but you have what's called the Iron Dome. You have anti-ballistic missiles, and those missiles that shoot down missiles will help out with radar and intelligence, and they'll aim at the desert. They're not going to aim for Tel Aviv, and they didn't. So now sort of everybody's happy because it's a war, so I don't know how happy they were. But Iran has the satisfaction of saying, we struck at Israel, we fired off everything we had, we showed them a thing or two. Israel gets to say, yeah, we defended our country, nobody was, maybe one or two casualties, sadly, but effectively nobody was killed or injured, nothing was damaged, aren't we great at defense? And then there's no further escalation, and that was evidenced by the fact that when it was done, the Iranian ambassador to the United Nations issued a statement saying, we had to do this, Israel attacked us, we had a right of self-defense, in effect, to shoot back, but we consider the matter concluded. And that was a key phrase. It's, okay, they shot at us, we shot at them, done. unless they come back again with another attack, and we'll get to that, this was done. And so Israel is now making noises about, well, we can't just sit there and shoot missiles at us, we're going to strike back at you. But boy, was it orchestrated. It was almost like a movie set where Iran agreed to do something that looked good to their people, but wasn't actually that threatening. Israel got to shoot them all down and not suffer that much damage. If Iran was serious, why weren't the missiles aimed at Tel Aviv or Jerusalem for that matter? And the Biden administration comes out ahead because they avoided World War III at a time when they got enough on their plate with Ukraine. And the British helped, the Jordanians helped. I mean, everybody knew. I mean, other than, Americans probably, everybody in the Middle East knew this was happening. It played out exactly as orchestrated. And then as far as the White House is concerned, you say, well, gee, do we put this on a par with Henry Kissinger, James Baker, George Shultz in terms of diplomatic brilliance? I would say no, they did orchestrate it, that's for sure. But it was all because of the election. It was all because the White House doesn't want another war. Well, we already have a war in Gaza, but it doesn't want a bigger war. It doesn't want a war with Iran at a time when they're trying to win the election. So it's a lot of kabuki. I mean, it was, got real missiles, real shoot downs, some damage, not much. I'm not making light of it, but I'm saying this thing was orchestrated from the get-go.
Could this lead to the U.S. intervention, anything over there in the Middle East? Could it lead us into some sort of war?
Well, it's possible, but it's certainly the last thing the White House wants for all the reasons we just went through. They did everything possible to orchestrate this. Okay, do what you got to do, but let's not escalate this. Could it get worse? Well, the answer is, of course, it could. The White House is going to do everything they can to make sure it doesn't. Iran doesn't want a war with Israel. Who would win? How that would play out? Those are big questions, but you can be sure that Iran's got their pretty full plate right now. They're selling a lot of oil to China. They're making a ton of money. They're working on the technology. With all that going on, they don't want a war. I mean, that would actually set back a lot of the progress I just described. Israel doesn't want a war with Iran because they got their hands full in Gaza. Israel's getting a lot of pushback from around the world. Why don't you wrap this up in Gaza? The civilian casualties are too great, et cetera. So Israel doesn't want a war with Iran because they've got a full plate. Iran doesn't want a war with Israel because a lot of things are going Iran's way right now. They're piling up a ton of money. They're making technological advances. They're selling drones to Russia. They're selling oil to China. And they're joining the BRICS. Things are really going well for Iran in a lot of respects. They don't want to mess that up. Neither side wants a war. And the White House certainly does not want a war because of the election, as I described. So my forecast would be this is not going to turn into a wider war, full-scale war between Israel and Iran, at least for the foreseeable future. It's not a 5-year forecast. Call it a 6-month forecast or 1-year forecast. It wouldn't take much to ignite it. Again, this is like a pile of dry kindling. It only takes one match to start a fire. Hopefully no one's lighting the match. I don't think they will for the near future. The potential's there, but I don't think it will turn into a wider war with the foreseeable future. China, no doubt, wants to be East Asia, Western Pacific, hegemonic power. They want to dominate the South China Sea. They want a lot of things. Eventually, they might want to take Taiwan. But again, they're not going to invade Taiwan in the next 6 months, maybe not the next 4 or 5 years. I'm not ruling it out longer term. That issue is not going away. They're confronting, Philippine workboats, or the Philippines are trying to do what South China has already done, which is take some reefs, basically, and dredge up the sea bottom, pile up less sand, make it an island, build facilities on it. That's what the Chinese did. They created islands out of, if not quite thin air, just, like I say, dredged up sand from the bottom of the ocean. China's pushing back, sending Coast Guard vessels in, using water cannons as a weapon to douse these Philippine boats and make it impossible for them to do a lot. There's tension there, but again, nobody wants to see that escalate into a war, at least of all the Chinese. These things may turn into wars in the future. That may well be the case, but for now, again, China's got a full plate. China's economy is not doing well. China's economy is slowing down dramatically. Bad debts are piling up. Commercial real estate sector is imploding. Apple has already moved, not quite, but almost 15% of their iPhone production to India. U.S. businesses are not investing in China on the whole. They're looking at Vietnam, Malaysia, Thailand, even Kazakhstan, India, wherever. I mean, it all depends on whether you need natural resources or manufacturing capacity or technology or whatever your inputs are. But American business is already pivoting away from China towards South Asia and India. So China's got a lot of problems. And again, I don't think they want to dial up the geopolitical tension beyond what's kind of there in the background. Russia's different. They have no way of avoiding the war in Ukraine. That's way too far along. So as far as Russia is concerned, the gloves are off. They were bombing transformers and power grid components, but now they're actually bombing power stations, the electricity generating stations. They're not stations, they're plants, large plants. They're destroying them. And so it's not a question of a temporary blackout. You got to fix the transformer, whatever. They've wiped out their capacity to generate electricity. The Russians also blew up a very, very large natural gas storage facility. And what's interesting about that is that was a natural gas storage facility for all of Europe. And Russia just blew it up. So now you could be looking at natural gas shortages in Europe. Their power grid or electric generating capacity has been to a great extent destroyed by the Russians. So the gloves are off.
Are you taking blame for inflation? No.
Why not?
Because it was already there when I got here, man. Remember what the economy was like when I got here?
We've squandered our time in the sun. We have too much debt, and the rest of the world says, hey, you've got too much debt. You're flooding the world with your dollars. We want a different reserve currency. Well, who's going to now come into that role? The BRICS nations. So Greenspan, when he made that comment, I believe that he's absolutely wrong. Because at some point, while you have the world's reserve currency, sure, you can fund every stimulus under the sun. You can raise the debt ceiling. You can spend like drunken sailors. But because you still have built-in demand for your currency, because you're the world's reserve currency. But if you don't have that, you have to have discretion in your printing. You have to have discretion in your spending. That's the trait that we don't have with politicians in America.
We can print our own money.
Why exactly are we borrowing in a currency that we print ourselves?
Well, again, some of this stuff gets, some of the language that some of the language and concepts are just confusing. I mean, the government definitely prints money, and it definitely lends that money, which is why the government definitely prints money, and then it lends that money by selling bonds. Is that what they do? They sell bonds. Yeah, they sell bonds, right? Because they sell bonds and people buy the bonds and lend them the money. Yeah. So, I guess I can't really talk. I don't get it. I don't know what they're talking about. Like, because it's like the government clearly prints money. It does it all the time, and it clearly borrows. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this debt and deficit conversation. So, I don't think there's anything confusing there.
Just because I don't know what it is, doesn't mean I'm lying.
The president, the most legislative, successful president in my lifetime. And, I don't have to go through the list, the bipartisan infrastructure law, the PACT Act, the CHIPS Act, all of that, inflation, 15 million jobs. Look, it's all good. I mean, I was really thrilled to meet the entire staff because it's not just one person.
You have failed me for the last time.
This inflation in home prices and building materials that I've just talked about, it's man-made, isn't it? And that man's name is Joe Biden, isn't it?
Senator, I think that we all experience the complexities of a global pandemic, and the economy is still, in many ways, absorbing some of that impact.
The National Association of Home Builders says that this new standard is going to add $31,000 on top of all of this inflation to the cost of a new home.
Job estimates from the Bureau of Labor Statistics are consistently false. Financial media outlets have reported the numbers are repeatedly false. Why should we continue to fund the Bureau of Labor Statistics when it's clearly not fulfilling its duties?
The Bureau of Labor Statistics puts out the most reliable data about our workforce, about unemployment, about job growth in industries that there is.
Okay, now, never to this level have the numbers been so inaccurate. So who is responsible for this? And has anybody been held accountable?
And the social problems that one will have in substituting humans for machines is going to be far easier in those countries that have declining populations.